There was once a little Irish boy named Johnny Washington. Things usually aren't easy for immigrant folk, but John had his father's Irish grin, his mother's Irish stick-to-itiveness, and Johnny sold newspapers. Sure, he'd like to play ball just as much as the other kids in his block, but if he took time off from his newspaper route, it was just so many pennies less to take to Mom, and there were 9 mouths to feed in the Washington household. Johnny loved music and sang in the church choir, and Johnny loved to fight. It must have been about the time he decided to become a priest that he was the leader of the South 12th Street Boys in Newark, a position which required not only moral suasion, but on occasion a black eye and a bloody nose. And John was always laughing, right through his trainings as a priest and after he was ordained. He played ball in the streets with the boys from his parish. He organized baseball teams, and when the war came along, his boys went into the Army. Father John went right along with them as a matter of course. They say that when the Dorchester went down, he was still laughing and singing to comfort those who could not reach the lifeboats. Next will be Ray Washington to speak about George L. Fox.
George Fox was the oldest of the 4 chaplains. Up in Vermont, they called him the Little Minister because he was only 5 feet 7 inches tall. Back in 1917, he lied about his age and enlisted in the Army as a medical corpsman. He won a Silver Star rescuing a wounded soldier from the battlefield filled with poison gas, although he himself had no gas mask on. He won the Croix de Gras for outstanding bravery in an artillery barrage. Fox also spent many months in a hospital with a broken spine. When George Fox came home to Vermont from the war, he continued his education and became a public accountant as planned. He was successful, happily married, and had 2 children. Then one evening he came home from work and told his wife he wanted to study for the ministry, and she approved. So George Fox became a minister. Then war came again. "I've got to go," he told his wife. "I know from experience what our boys are going to face. They need me." Before he boarded the Dorchester, he wrote a letter to his little daughter. She received it after the news that the ship was torpedoed. "I want you to know," he wrote, "how proud I am that your marks in school are so high. But always remember that kindness and charity and courtesy are much more important." Ted Clark will do the next reading for Alexander Good.
Alexander Good was too young for World War I. So while George Fox was winning medals on the battlefield in France, Good was receiving medals at Eastern High School in Washington, D.C. for tennis, swimming, and track. Apparently he was also led his class in scholarship. He planned to follow in his father's footsteps and become a rabbi, but that didn't keep him from having a laughing, shouting boyhood with all the Protestant and Catholic boys in the neighborhood. When the body of the unknown soldier was brought to Arlington Cemetery, Alex Good attended the ceremonies. He could have just easily have ridden the 15 miles because there were trolleys and buses in Washington, D.C., and the Good family had a fine family car. However, Alexander thought it showed more respect to walk, and walk he did all the way to Arlington and back, 30 miles. And that's how he felt about respect for the unknown soldier. He married his childhood sweetheart, and they had a daughter. And after his call to a synagogue in York, Pennsylvania, he continued his studies at Johns Hopkins University and earned his PhD. One day in 1943, Mrs. Good received a telegram from her husband. It said, "Having a wonderful experience." So she knew that her husband had found a warm companionship with the men with whom he shared both his faith and his laughter.
This reading is about Clark V Poulton. Clark Poling was the youngest of the 4 men of God. Clark's first letter was written to his father, and it was written in a square block printing and was addressed by his mother. The letter found his father, Dr. Poling, February 1918, in a dugout on the western front of another world war. The letter read, "Dear Daddy, gee, I wish I was where you are. Love, Clark." And in exactly 25 years, that eager little boy received his wish. Clark was the 7th generation in an unbroken line of ministers of the gospel. He was ordained in the Dutch Reformed Church and was assigned a pulpit in Schenectady, New York. He married a girl named Betty, and they had a little boy called Corky. The little girl was born to Mrs. Poling at Easter time after the Dorchester went down in February. When the war came along, Clark did not want to go as a chaplain. "I can carry a gun as well as the next guy," he told his father. "I'm not going to hide behind the church in some safe office out of the firing line." "I think you're scared," the elder Poling joked. "Don't you know that the mortality rate of chaplains is the highest of all? As a chaplain, you'll have the best chance in the world to be killed. The only difference is you can't carry a gun or kill anyone yourself." Thus, Clark Poling became a chaplain. Just before Clark sailed, he visited his father. And they were alone in Dr. Poling's study when Clark turned to his father and said, "Dad, you know how much confidence I have in your prayers. Dad, I don't want you to pray for my safe return. That wouldn't be fair. Many will not return. To ask for special family favors wouldn't be fair. No, Dad, don't pray for my safe return. Just pray that I shall do my duty and something more. Pray that I shall never be a coward. Pray that I shall have the strength, courage, and understanding of men, and especially pray that I shall be adequate." Dr. Poling tells us that the prayer he prayed as the Clark Poling would be adequate. Clark taught his men not to be personally hatred for Germans or Japanese soldiers or civilians. His text was simple: hate the system that your brother's evil. It is the system we must destroy.
Carl Sandburg said, "Valor is a gift. Those having it never know for sure whether they have it until the test comes." That night on February 3rd, 1943, the 4 chaplains passed life's ultimate test. And in doing so, they became an enduring example of extraordinary faith, courage, and selflessness. The Distinguished Service Cross and Purple Heart were awarded posthumously on December 19, 1944. A one-time only posthumous Special Medal for Heroism was authorized by Congress and awarded to the 4 chaplains by President Eisenhower on January 18, 1961. I want to thank you all for coming this day. This is our fifth time of doing the 4 chaplain ceremony, and I've enjoyed doing it every single time. Jerry Gray will have a closing prayer. Then I have a couple other words to say, and we will be done. Uncover.
God of our Father and of our God, we thank you for the unity that the Dorchester chaplains, these 4 men of God, demonstrated in life and in death. Unity that is not uniformity, unity that strengthens with each one of us every worthy loyalty of faith and practice. unity that transcends all our differences and makes us one in loyalty to our country and our fellow men. And to you, our God, grant us now your abiding presence, and may we refrain faithful to the spirit of our four chaplains, who having learned to live and serve together in death were not divided. Amen.
Recover, please. Carl, please retrieve the MI POW flag. Just one message before we leave. The Honor Guard and Color Guard members will have a meeting at the end of the ceremony in the back room. Everybody attention. The flag of our country in place. Salute. 2.